For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we, yet without sin. He never sinned. But he understands what we go through and the struggle we face. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 8 then goes on and he says, and being found in the form, and now this is the schema, this would be similar to putting on a mask. So he's not displaying who he truly is in an outward way where you can look at him and see that this is God. So being in the appearance of a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even to the death of a cross. He did not consider who he was to be of such value that taking on the form of a servant was unworthy of him. Taking on the form of a servant did not change who he was. He did this to ultimately fulfill the desires of God the Father. He became like his brethren also, so that he could actually serve as a high priest. We can't have a high priest that doesn't understand us. Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 17 talks about this. Therefore, in all things he had to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make a satisfaction for the sins of the people. He humbled himself even to the point of death. That is the death on a cross. Even to that point, he humbled himself. You know, Christ actually had to die in order to enter into his glory. Luke chapter 24 and verse 26 talks about this. It says, not that, and of course, I should say in the context, what we have going on is the men who are walking along the road to the city of Emmaus, and Christ comes alongside them, and they're like, have you not heard of all that has happened and everything? And he begins to explain to them things. And in verse 26, it says, ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to entered into his glory? And he began at Moses and all the prophets, and he expounded to him all the scripture and the things concerning himself. And then they finally began to understand. Yeah, when you go back into the Old Testament, it's all there. They just didn't understand it because they had a veil on their minds because of their hardness of their hearts. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so Christ was lifted up to draw all men unto himself. We see this over John chapter 3 and verse 14. By being lifted up unto death, Christ draws himself, all the people from the earth, over in John chapter 12 and verse 32, to himself. So John 12:32 says, and I, if I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself, or will literally draw all to myself. God the Father's response to Christ submitting to his will was to exalt him and give him a name which is above every name. This is not the name Jesus, by the way. We don't know this name yet.